reason why they're having that dream and what they're supposed to expect. And the butler tells it to Joseph, and he says, look, in my dream, I see these 3 vines, and the 3 vines have sprouted clusters of grapes, and I take a cluster of grapes, and I've got a cup of Pharaoh in my hand, my other hand, and I squeeze the grapes into that glass, and then I take the glass, and I'm handing it to Pharaoh. Joseph says, 3 vines, it's 3 days. 3 days, you will once again be squeezing the grapes, bringing the grape juice and the wine and the finest wines, and serving your master as you did before. I want you to know, I could interpret it differently, but I am telling you how it's going to play out without my own personal interpretation, so that you will be successful. And the purpose of you having this dream and me interpreting it for you, so that you will be successful and freed in 3 days, is so that you should tell Pharaoh that there's this kid over here who doesn't belong here, who didn't do anything. I've been kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and I don't belong in Egypt. I was not a slave. I was a chief. I belonged to a family of chiefs. And even while I was here, I didn't do anything to deserve being incarcerated. For he did the right thing. I did the right thing. And for that, I was jailed. And there must be a reason. And the reason is I should meet up with you, and you have Pharaoh's ear, so that I can get out of here, get out of the jail, and get out of Egypt. Remember. Remember. Then the baker comes along. The baker says, well, I also had a dream. I dreamt I had 3 baskets filled with the finest pastries of Pharaoh. And I had one on my head and one in each arm, and the birds were eating from the pastries that I had on my head. And Joseph said, well, yours is not so good. 3 baskets, 3 days. Pharaoh's going to think about you in 3 days, going to decide that you are no longer fit for his service, and he's going to hang you. And the birds will eat your flesh, which had benefited all these years from the pastries of the king. People ask, why did he say this, when we know that all dreams can be interpreted whichever way the interpreter wishes? So why does Joseph give such an unfavorable interpretation to the baker? And yes, my teacher, my master, Rabbi Yechatzkel Gruvner, of blessed memory, passed away this year, told me, a bird is usually afraid of going on top of somebody's head. That was a sign to Joseph that the man was dead and the bird was eating from him. But still, it could be, the bird could be a messenger, harbinger of good news, of a change in scenery. He could be brought into a different realm, a different place, to have a new office, a luxurious office. Could have interpreted any way he wanted. Joseph saw in the dream just exactly the character of the individuals. The butler, he was interested only in serving his master. And that's why he dreamed that he could take the grapes and squeeze them and put them in the cup. And this was what he wanted. He wanted to be able to serve the great king, Pharaoh. He was a true and trusted servant. And the baker was only interested in having an opportunity to have a good meal. By being the baker, he delighted in enjoying the food, the free food. And the bird eating the free food was like him having the free food. He had no intent of presenting the food to Pharaoh. And that's why he dies. The bird eats from him, from his flesh, because all he cared about was the free food. So Joseph interprets the dream for the butler, and guess what? The butler forgets about him. He's got a reason why, but he has an excuse. I don't think it's a good idea for me the day that I get out. He got out on the day of Pharaoh's birthday. He didn't think it was a good idea on Pharaoh's birthday to talk about some stupid slave who's locked up in the executioner's jailhouse. He doesn't want to make any reference to the jail at all in that day. He just glad to be out. And then afterwards, he forgot him consciously. He didn't mention him the first day because he was afraid. And then afterwards, he just said, I'm not going to talk about it. I don't think that I owe anything to that Hebrew. I think God has helped me, and he was the agent, but I don't have to help that guy. He's nothing. And so he forgot him. The man who was helped by Joseph. Joseph told him, I'm interpreting it this way for your benefit so that you get me out. And you agree. He said, yes. The last thing he remembers from the jail is Joseph pointing the finger. You see, you got to remember. And he didn't. He didn't remember. Why? And again, the same mistake. Joseph sees a prophetic situation, a prophetic condition, which is his dream, the dream of the butler, a prophecy. And he sees the prophecy as a means to hasten what he wants, to get what he wants, which is his freedom. And instead of leaving the prophecy to the realm of God, and this is something which is godly, it's got nothing to do with a human being, he tries to short-circuit the system to his advantage, just like he tried to short-circuit the system by telling the prophecy to his brothers. He's going to use this prophecy to get out. What does God show him? God shows him that a prophecy and God has to let God figure things out. Let God figure out how things are supposed to go. Don't try to do it yourself. Don't try to intervene and do your own thing. Remember, when you deal with a prophecy and you don't have the permission to tell someone, that other person takes it the wrong way. The butler saw Joseph as an opportunist, as someone who did not have true humility, as someone who was trying to get the easy way out. And this is not what Joseph had to teach the butler. He had to teach the butler he believed in God, he had faith in God, and that God would help him, rather than having faith in a human being and trying to teach the human being that he was the channel of God. No, he was not God's channel. He doesn't want to be God's channel. Doesn't want to be Joseph's agent either. And so now Joseph has learned his lesson, maybe. And 2 years later, he's called again to interpret someone's dream. But this time, it's the chief honcho himself. It's Pharaoh. And he's called to interpret the dream of Pharaoh. Pharaoh sees 2 different dreams. One of 7 fat cows being swallowed by 7 skinny cows. The other, he sees 7 fat ears of corn growing on one stalk, being swallowed by 7 skinny stalks. And suddenly he's frightened, and he has to find an answer, and he can't find an answer. And because he can't find an answer, he asks the wise men, and the only person who can tell him what to do is the butler. The butler tells him that there's a guy in the jail of the butcher who's got all the answers, who can interpret any dream, but he's a stupid, ignorant Hebrew slave. Pharaoh wants to see the stupid, ignorant Hebrew slave who can interpret dreams.